It's getting deeper, and I think we have Cassie back. Cassie, you with us?
Hey, I'm so sorry about that. Yes, we are back. I hope that's better.
Yeah, much better, much better. So everybody's out in the states doing what they need to do in this final run-up to the campaign culmination, if you will. What are some of the things that they're hearing back, and what are you hearing back in regards to how things are going for the RNC in America in the build-up here?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and I'm sure you all have talked about this on your program, the enthusiasm. And there's such an enthusiasm gap between our voters and those going out to vote for Joe Biden. Why is that? And it's because, in 2016, we were so excited to go out and vote for this new person, Donald Trump, that was promising all these things, and it seemed that it was new and refreshing. And then now it really is about not only those promises made, but the promises kept and how much more we can do. And then couple that with this absolute certainty. I don't think we've ever been more certain about what would happen if Joe Biden was able to get close to the White House. I think we've said this in past campaigns and then, does that really happen? But the Democrats are not even trying to hide it anymore. They're not trying to hide their socialist values. They're not trying to hide that they are flagrantly interfering with other countries for their own personal gain. The president said it so well the other night. I believe it was during his rally in Pennsylvania. Hard to keep him straight. But he said, the Bidens got rich while the American people got robbed. That's what happened when Joe Biden was in the Senate and when he was vice president. And make no mistake, that's what will happen again, because he does not live with any fear of being held accountable. The media won't hold him accountable. We're seeing with these debates, the debate commission is changing the rules to try and make it easy for him. The only thing that stood between the American people and having to deal with socialism and corruption in our country is Donald Trump and the will of the voters in 2016. And that's what we're seeking to go out and do again in just 2 short weeks.
Well, and President Trump is doing a great job of being Donald Trump at the rallies. I saw where at one of the rallies last night, he hung a new nickname on Adam Schiff, called him Watermelon Head. He did, on stage.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's a show, it's entertainment, but, he calls it out, and I think whether it's pencil neck or watermelon, all that, but the reason that it resonates with people is because for so long, we were just told, sit down and accept it. We know better than you. These elected officials in Congress, these career politicians, we know better than you hardworking Americans who are just working to get your family food on the table and maybe even get a night out to eat or a vacation. We know better than you, and just accept it. And Donald Trump changed all of that. He said, you don't have to accept it. I've been watching myself all of these years how these people work, and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to blow up the system. And that's what he did. And he gave us all our voices back, and he gave us all our empowerment back. When you vote, you feel empowered now. You don't feel like, well, I'm going to vote, and I hope that person doesn't just end up going back and doing their old politician ways. Because Donald Trump has shown us that if you do that, there is a recourse, and that's the voice of the voter. And so I love that he goes out and he barnstorms the country with these rallies. I think it's his happy place. I think he gets his energy refill from being out with the people, not being in Washington, certainly. And unlike Joe Biden, who actively hides. I know we talk about him being in his basement, but even when he is out and about, he holds these very controlled events so that he doesn't risk saying anything regrettable or being asked a difficult question. And the president just embraces it and goes out, and I think that's what's refreshing, and that's what leads us to believe that this is only the beginning of what could be for our country if we get 4 more years of President Trump. And, of course, I'd be remiss if we didn't say it was Republicans, too. That Senate is the last stand against socialism in the legislative branch, and we've got to retain it.
Well, and we have a risk of losing that, don't we, Cassie? Unfortunately, I hate to say it that way, but it looks like there may be a risk of losing that. That's why it's so important to keep the energy up and keep everybody focused.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And, we saw, and this is typical in the midterms, folks who came out in the presidential years maybe stay home during the midterm. So I think some of these folks who stayed home in 2018, they've probably already voted or for sure first in line to vote for President Trump again in 20. And so that's going to help everybody. But you got to understand that it has to be the whole team, because we don't get all of the promises made and promises kept of President Trump if you've got Chuck Schumer as the majority leader in the Senate and Nancy Pelosi as the Speaker of the House. You don't get all of that. You get the exact opposite of that. We've got to make sure that we can empower President Trump to continue to deliver for us. And the only way you do that is to make sure that he's got a good team in the legislative branch.
Well, and we have the battling endorsements going on right now. Just in the last 24 hours or so, former President Obama has endorsed Mike Espy, who's running against Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith here in the state. And then last night, President Trump tweeted out his support and endorsement of Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. That's why it's important. We're getting some very high-level people paying attention to the Senate race, even here in Mississippi, which some people thought was a foregone conclusion. We can't fall into the trap of thinking anything is a foregone conclusion right now.
That's right. I don't believe for a minute that many Mississippians are going to change their vote or all of a sudden believe that whatever Barack Obama says is going to be good for your state. You know that to not be the case. But we do have to make sure that people get out and vote. Don't take for granted that your neighbor's going to take care of you. Oh, he's going to vote, so that's okay. I don't need to. If I don't make it, or I get stuck in traffic, or I get stuck at the grocery store and, oh, shoot, I didn't make it. Make your plan. That's what we always say. Make your plan. Put it in your calendar. Put it on your phone. Set yourself a reminder, because you don't want to go through Election Day and then you realize polls are closing in 10 minutes and you can't get over there in time. Just go ahead and carve that time in the same way you would dropping your kids off at school or going, to a workout class. That's what we always say. People who schedule their workout class, they're real good about remembering to vote. But that's just have that plan together, because it is so important. And if we reelect President Trump but lose the majority in the Senate, we are in for a tumultuous couple of years. And nobody wants that. That's just as bad as if we had lost the White House, because what they would be planning to do in the Senate with trying to make D.C. and Puerto Rico states, getting rid of the filibuster, packing the Supreme Court. My God, that is a terrible thought. And those are all the things that they're just waiting in the wings to be able to do, hoping and praying that y'all forget to go vote on November 3rd. And we can't have that, so make your plan.
And that is something they're not even hiding, as you said. They're not even playing
That's
around
right.
anymore. They're just coming right out and telling you what they're going to do if they get in power. That's why we can't let it happen. Can you hang on through the break?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. Cassie Smedile, Deputy Communications Director with RNC. We'll continue with her next on the Cassie Smedile, Deputy Communications Director with RNC, on the guest line with us here on the JT Show. And Cassie, what do you make at the RNC of the entire situation that's going on with the Biden's business connections to China and other foreign governments? The Hunter Biden laptop started this. Now one of their business associates that was in this entire situation with them has come forward to confirm that it was, in fact, as bad as some of us thought it was going to be. What do you make of that in terms of this election?
Yeah, I don't know whether to be more upset at the mounting evidence that Joe Biden used the vice presidency to line his family's pockets while the American people got robbed, or that the mainstream media is covering for him, and big tech, by the way, as well. That I just saw a note this morning from NPR that they're not even going to do any reporting on this. They're not going to look into it. They've decided it's false, and you should too. More of this elitism, this we know better than you-ism that Joe Biden has been a part of for 47 years, and they're covering for him. That we should all be shocked and outraged and, frankly, scared to death that this all happened under our nose, and there was no accountability for it, no fear of accountability for it. Joe Biden did this because we have the proof in the emails now that this wasn't, oh, Hunter was up to something and I had no idea what he was up to. He was part of the deal. Remember, Hunter said he's got to give he's got to give his dad half his paycheck, and that we should be scared that that's happening, that sort of corruption can happen, and yet that the media would go out there and go after anybody who dares say that Joe Biden is anything other than just the nice guy next door. It's frightening. This is what happens in state-run media countries. This is what happens in countries that we worked hard to separate ourselves from. And this is what would continue to happen without a doubt if Joe Biden had another opportunity to get close to the White House. Into the White House.
I would
if
say
that's
it
what he
would
did
get
as
worse.
VP, what would he do as president?
Exactly. I would say it would get worse than it is now. Not that it would continue. It would just continue to build and get worse and worse. And to me, the censorship by the national media operates on several different levels. One of those is, and we talked about this yesterday, best exemplified by the press conference that was held regarding the new movements by the Trump administration towards combating human trafficking. And I think they had 3 people show up and nobody had any questions.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't heard a word about it.
Yeah. Yep. Nope. They have, because, you know, they've been open about this. We were saying at the end of the last segment that they're not even trying to hide it anymore. They're not trying to hide their bias. They're not trying to hide, Democrats aren't trying to hide that they absolutely are interested in moving not towards socialism, to socialism. And then you see with the media, too, because in 2016, they were all called out by their colleagues for anybody who covered Donald Trump, anybody who gave credence to his policy proposals, anybody who even had guests on who were legitimate supporters of then candidate Trump. I mean, we've even seen over these past 4 years, and this is something we work with often because we talk with surrogates of the presidents and people in the administration, people formerly in the administration who typically would be the top of the list to go out and be voices, particularly on cable news. You know this, to interview and stuff and to give their point of view. They're not interested. They put on people who are quote unquote Republicans that we know are no supporter of the president, but certainly are very out of touch with today's Republican Party. And they count that as good. They are purposely doing it. They're hoping you don't notice. But the thing that they are not accounting for is that we do know exactly what we're doing and what they're doing, and we will not be fooled. And here again, all of this was happening for an untold number of years before Donald Trump. And he comes along and he says, I will fight for you. I will be in this fight with you. Let's go and prove them all wrong. And the will of the voters prevailed. And that's what has to happen again in less than 2 weeks. And that's why when we talk about make a plan to vote, you can go to vote.gop. That's our favorite spot to find out where your voting location is, all the options available to you for voting. Make sure that this doesn't slip from your to-do list and get it done.
Well, exactly, because we have 2 candidates that now that he has served 1 term, both have a track record you can look at. For President Trump, he has probably kept more promises from the campaign trail 4 years ago than anyone I can remember in my lifetime that won an election. And then you have former Vice President Biden, who after 47 years, what? Is there really anything worth pointing to that he accomplished?
Right, other than what he accomplished for his own personal interests. The president has done more in 47 months for our country and for hardworking Americans than Joe Biden did in 47 years. And when you look at what Joe Biden did, oftentimes it was the exact opposite of what we needed to happen, whether it was bad trade deals, whether it was criminal justice reform. He was only ever interested in what was politically astute for him at the moment. It was never about the people. And that's what Donald Trump has brought back. And it's so funny you talk about the accomplishments. I don't know if you had the same reaction if you watched the Republican convention, but there were all of these moments and you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot that happened. I forgot we moved the embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. I forgot we brought all of those hostages home. Oh my gosh, we had the USMCA. All of these things, the tax cuts, the opportunity zones, criminal justice reform, all these things that happen, big and small and otherwise. There's just so much stuff that it's hard to believe that was all just in the last 4 years. And imagine what's to come. He's not done yet. When he says the best is yet to come, let your imagination run wild of what that could mean, because that's all possible when you have someone who's not beholden to the special interests, is not tied up in the Beltway elitism cocktail party circuit. You have someone who says, I'm here for a finite amount of time, and I'm going to do everything I possibly can to make this country a better place. And why would we ever choose a different direction than that? confounding, and I don't think we will. I think we will see an even bigger win on November 3rd than we saw 4 years ago.
And that leads perfectly into my next question. I'm just curious what your take is at the RNC. November 3rd is Election Day. The polls will close that night, and this is going to be different than ever before because when do you think we will know a definitive answer as to who won the presidential election? It's not going to be November 3rd that evening. I think we can all agree on that. But how long is this going to stretch out?
Yeah, the only way it's November 3rd is if it's that resounding of a win. So we're hoping for that, of course. But this is something that we've been battling against for the last really several months, 4 or 5 months. The Democrats have made this concerted effort to launch all of these lawsuits in states to try and expand the length of time that you can turn in your ballot after Election Day, ballot harvesting, undoing signature requirements on ballots. So that gets into a whole other conversation about the validity of ballots. And, of course, we have all sorts of examples. The mainstream media likes to say this isn't true, but you watch any local news station, you know it is, where live ballots are being delivered to the wrong addresses or in bulk to apartment buildings with people who haven't lived there in years if they ever did, because this is all happening because of these largely Democrat-controlled states and areas, all of their efforts to very quickly try and usher in a new voting process. And part of that has to do with extending the days that things can be counted. So we've actually gotten a lot of wins on this to at least try and limit the number of days after Election Day that you can count a ballot, or protecting those signature verifications and things like that. But we have also called up the phone tree of lawyers around the country to make sure on Election Day that we've got people at the ready in case there's any funny business going on. And I would say that's something that is done in every election, but we're really taking particular note of it this year because of all of the efforts the Democrats have made to undo election security measures in such a short amount of time.
And it's really, to me, endemic of the entire Democratic mindset, which is we'll worry if it's legal later. We're going to do what we want to do now, and you better not try to stop us or you're a horrible person.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't fly.
That is exactly right, yeah. That's exactly right. And I would also note, one thing that I always think about is, don't you all believe that you can just win on your own? Don't you believe that your positions and what you're putting forth is enough to win? Why do you need to tie up things in legalese? And why do you need to overcomplicate the matter and confuse people about when and where they can vote if you were so confident in your platform? That's always my issue with the Democrats. But on the Republican side, thank goodness for our Chairwoman McDaniel and our incredibly generous donors, so many of whom are giving us $5, $10, $15, we are able to have a very well-funded account to go after all of these. It's like whack-a-mole, but they keep hitting them down as soon as they pop up, to try and protect the vote, to try and make you confident, ensure that you are confident that when you cast your ballot, it will be counted as you intended it. And those are all the things we're working on. As I tell people all the time, first of all, you can go to protectthevote.org to figure out what's going on and where we are and what are the status of these efforts that the Democrats are trying to do to suppress the vote. But also do what you always do. Go to your local office, get your ballot, return it in person, or go on Election Day, as we know so many of our voters love to do, so you get your I voted sticker. Go and do what you always do. Any
Cassie,
efforts to try.
We're up against the break. We appreciate your time, Cassie, so much.
Thank you. Have a good one.